Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take what seems like an overwhelming mountain of information, in this case, a massive library designed to keep workers alive, and give you the ultimate shortcut to understanding the governing principles behind it all.
Today, we're unpacking the extensive curriculum used across the entire construction world, the Toolbox docs. For you, the learner, this is more than just a list of required meetings.
Right.
It's a complete roadmap to managing risk in the most complex, chaotic, and dangerous environments imaginable.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. A toolbox talk is essentially a short, focused safety discussion, usually right before a shift starts.
Exactly. It's meant to be immediate, focused on the risks of that day on that site, and it has to be documented.
And we're looking at sources that provide over 100 free topics, which to me confirms that construction safety isn't one topic, it's 100 distinct critical challenges.
That's the key right there. And what's fascinating here is how universal this material is. Our sources confirm this comprehensive curricula is used by everybody. From the local subcontractor specializing in, say, concrete or electrical work, all the way up to massive general contractors and heavy civil operations. Our mission today is really to show you that managing safety requires managing this highly complex system where physical risks intersect with human psychology.
And the regulatory requirements are sort of the administrative backbone of this whole system. These talks aren't just informal chats, are they?
Not at all. They're documented training events.
The resources even include a dedicated Toolbox talk attendance sheet template. That piece of paper is obviously crucial.
It is the difference between having a chat and having legally defensible training.
Ah.
When we connect this to the bigger picture, that documentation satisfies OSHA requirements. It proves that training was provided, who attended it, and what specific topic was covered. It turns a casual safety reminder into a piece of liability defense.
And this comprehensive structure, with over 100 distinct topics, is necessary because the risks faced by different specialties vary so wildly.
Exactly. You can't give a concrete finisher the same talk you give a roofer. It just wouldn't apply.
Right.
The sources highlight this specialization perfectly. For a roofing crew, the primary existential threat is gravity. So they need specialized discussions on fall protection, falls in the construction industry, and even falls on the same level, which addresses hazards beyond height.
Meanwhile, an excavating crew, they might not worry about height as much, but they are completely focused on excavation safety and preventing underground utility strikes.
Totally different world. They need to know the risks of trench collapse, shoring, how to spot active gas or electrical lines before they dig. It's all about targeted knowledge for targeted risk.
And that need for specificity, that immediately leads us into the most critical and often mandatory topics, what everyone recognizes as the high-risk hard hat hazards.
Yeah, this is section 2, the things that come to mind first when you picture a construction site.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because the talk topics directly reflect what the industry knows are the main killers, the statistical drivers of fatalities. We're talking about topics related to the infamous Fatal Four.
And we should probably define those for you. The Fatal Four categories, that's falls, struck by objects, electrocutions, and caught in between. They account for the overwhelming majority of worker fatalities every single year, according to OSHA data.
So they're the core risks.
They're the core risks that absolutely must be addressed daily.
So the talks break down those 4 categories into these highly specific bite-sized lessons. For falls, which is consistently number 1, the list goes beyond the obvious. It includes falls on the same level. I have to ask, isn't construction safety all about working at heights?
That's a great question, and it really shows the complexity here. While high-level fall protection is, of course, mandatory, the sources emphasize that simple slips, trips, and falls on level ground cause a massive amount of lost time and worker injury.
So it broadens the definition of fall risk.
It broadens it beyond just scaffolding and addresses things like, ice, debris, or poor cords running across a walkway. Everyday stuff.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Shifting to struck-by incidents, the second major category, we see topics for specific scenarios like overhead hazards and dropped objects. But I'm intrigued by the talk titled Line of Fire. What's that about?
Line of fire is a crucial conceptual topic. It's not about a specific object. It's about situational awareness.
Okay.
It trains workers to identify where they are positioned relative to moving equipment, falling materials, or pressurized systems. It's this constant awareness that you are a potential target and you need to adjust your position to avoid that risk.
Moving on to electrical dangers, the sources require addressing everything from basic electrical safety and extension cord safety all the way to the severe risk of overhead power lines.
That's because the hazard isn't just touching a live wire, it's things like arc flash, which can be absolutely catastrophic.
And rounding out the traditional high-risk list are talks focused on deep earth hazards like excavation safety and specifically preventing underground utility strikes.
Hitting a high-pressure gas line is an immediate disaster. There's no room for error there.
And beyond the fatal four, safety management absolutely revolves around heavy equipment. The talks dive deep into the specific tools that demand training. We see topics from forklift safety and preventing catastrophic dump truck overturns to really specialized subjects like the excavator quick coupler device.
That quick coupler device is a fantastic example of risk specificity.
How so?
Well, it's the device that quickly attaches and detaches a bucket to the excavator arm. If that fails, that huge bucket can fall right off. A talk on that means you are addressing a very specific mechanical failure point that has resulted in serious injuries when it's ignored.
And I hadn't really considered the small equipment. What's brilliant here is the inclusion of smaller but, ubiquitous equipment talks, things like chainsaw safety, skid steer operation.
And even down to hand tool safety and pressure washing safety.
Right.
This attention to the smallest tool shows that the mindset of safety has to be 100% focused, whether you're handling a massive excavator or just a handsaw.
It requires absolute attention to detail.
And that same level of detail applies when we look at the invisible dangers in the environment, which brings us to Section 3.
Right. We're shifting focus now, moving beyond the immediate physical dangers of equipment failure or gravity, and looking at the hazards dictated by nature and the materials themselves. The microhazards.
These are the risks that kind of creep up on you slowly or are completely invisible until it's too late. They demand preparation far in advance of the shift.
When we look at weather extremes, the talk library is extensive. You have the immediate dangers like lightning safety and high wind dangers, but also complex physiological topics. They distinguish clearly between preventing heat stress and managing the emergency of heat stroke.
And that preparation extends to cold environments too. They prepare for winter work with talks on cold stress, specific procedures for shoveling snow, winter weather driving, and even understanding how to read the wind chill index.
So they aren't just saying dress warm.
No. They are training workers on the actual physics of exposure. It's much deeper than that.
Then we tackle the silent, invisible threats, the long-term health risks that demand material handling and respiratory protection. The sources explicitly list talks on asbestos, silica dust, and the resulting disease, silicosis.
This is a major area where safety management protects future health, not just immediate injury. Silica dust, for instance, is created when you're cutting concrete or stone.
You can't even see it.
It's invisible, but it scars the lungs permanently. So a talk about silica dust requires workers to understand engineering controls like water suppression or ventilation, not just, wearing a cheap mask.
And we can't forget basic chemical and fire dangers like gasoline safety and burn safety. But to round out this section, we should look at organizational failure. Bad management or a chaotic site often creates the conditions for failure.
That's absolutely correct. The structure recognizes that chaos is a hazard unto itself. That's why they include comprehensive talks like housekeeping.
Which even details 3 types of poor housekeeping hazards.
Right, and practical advice on the organization of laydown yard and general work area best practices.
It's about preparation down to the minute details. It's checking your equipment topics like ladder inspection and ensuring proper methods for lifting and rigging, and even the specific procedures for unloading trailers.
The system demands order because order prevents shortcuts.
Which brings us to Section 4. And for you, the learner, this is often the most insightful part of the deep dive. This is where safety goes beyond the physical risk and enters into psychology, behavior, and personal health.
The industry recognized years ago that you can shield, guard, and engineer all you want, but ultimately, safety is controlled by the choices people make.
I find these topics to be the real aha moments because they move from checking hardware to checking your mindset. We have talks on common unsafe behaviors in construction safety, and what really stands out to me, rationalizing unsafe choices.
This targets cognitive bias directly. Rationalizing unsafe choices is that internal shortcut we all take when we perceive a low risk.
Oh yeah, it's just 5 minutes, I don't need the harness.
Exactly. Or, I've done this 100 times, it's fine.
Yeah.
The goal of that talk is to expose and correct that internal faulty logic before it leads to catastrophe.
And the talks discuss the responsibility that comes with that awareness. They cover topics like take ownership of safety, detailed task planning, and maximizing situational awareness.
The language is very proactive.
It is. It encourages workers to be ready for the unexpected, with talks like recognized versus unrecognized hazards, and the simple but profound instruction to leave yourself an out.
And then the curriculum shifts into personal wellness, recognizing that the human body is the most critical piece of equipment on site. If the operator is failing, the whole system fails.
That's why we see topics focused entirely on physiological readiness, fatigue, sleep safety, and the dangers inherent in shift work.
And preventing physical wear and tear is also critical, covered by hydration, dehydration, stretching pros and cons, and specialized talks on manual handling, injury prevention, and back injury prevention. They are treating the body like a piece of machinery that needs maintenance.
And because medical emergencies don't wait for you to clock out, the talks cover critical health and emergency response topics, managing heart attacks and stroke signs, and emergency response.
And the proper deployment of the automated external defibrillator, or AED, along with basic first aid preparedness.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture of non-physical risks, I was genuinely surprised to see workplace suicide listed under safety topics. How do the sources justify including that alongside something like fall protection?
That's a deeply insightful question, and it speaks to the holistic evolution of safety management. Construction is a high-stress, physically demanding, and often isolating field, statistically dominated by men. The industry has recognized that severe mental distress is a major factor in worker impairment, accidents, retention, and, tragically, fatality. Including workplace suicide under the safety umbrella means the company is acknowledging its commitment to worker well-being.
So they're viewing mental health failure as a hazard.
As a hazard that must be mitigated, just like any physical risk.
That shifts the entire paradigm of what a safety program is supposed to achieve. We also see topics addressing behavior off-site that impacts the job, like motor vehicle safety and distracted driving.
Acknowledging that the risk starts before you even arrive.
Exactly.
And securing the perimeter, too. Talks address external threats to the worksite and personnel, covering workplace violence and methods for construction site theft prevention. Safety managers have to deal with everything from trench collapse to property crime.
And here's where the list shows its adaptability, in Section 5. The sources include several talks explicitly related to recent historical events, proving safety management is a living document.
It has to be fluid. We see the lessons learned during the pandemic immediately codified, covering COVID-19 and other communicable diseases, specific instruction on COVID-19 cleaning and decontamination, social distancing, symptoms, and worksite safety.
It shows that any large-scale systemic risk has to be addressed and documented and quickly.
Right.
And finally, the ultimate argument for why all of this granularity, covering over 100 topics, is necessary is contained in one alarming topic.
Yep.
The talk titled, $1 billion spent on injuries a week.
That figure is the core business case. It connects every individual choice, every ladder inspection, every behavioral consideration, back to the staggering economic reality of the industry.
Wow.
When a single accident can cost hundreds of thousands in fines, lost time, and insurance hikes, the ROI on every single one of these toolbox talks becomes crystal clear.
What we've done in this deep dive is synthesize a tremendous scope covering everything from hyper-specific skills like HDPE, pipe welding, and eliminating pinch points to generalized organizational and preventative health topics. Being truly well-informed in construction safety means understanding three things: the physical systems, the behavioral systems, and the organizational systems required to achieve zero injuries.
If we were to summarize the guiding philosophy for all these individual talks, we would point to the most important technical concept listed in the curriculum: the hierarchy of controls. This is the core belief that governs risk mitigation.
And to clarify that for you, the learner, the hierarchy of controls, dictates how you approach a hazard, always prioritizing the most effective control, which is what?
It starts with elimination, getting rid of the hazard entirely. Then substitution, replacing it with something less dangerous. Then engineering, designing the risk out. Then administrative controls like rules and training, which is where these toolbox talks live.
And finally, at the very bottom is PPE, personal protective equipment, like a hard hat. It's the last line of defense.
That makes perfect sense. Exactly. And this knowledge isn't just for construction workers. It's a template for managing risk in any complex environment. Analyze the hazard, find the most effective control method according to that hierarchy, and then document it.
Well, we've certainly established that safety is far from a simple topic.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to take away. Given the depth and detail required for physical hazards on a construction site, what unrecognized non-physical hazards like rationalizing unsafe choices, fatigue, or even workplace suicide might you be encountering and need to prepare for in your own professional environment? The lessons learned by safety managers on the job site often apply universally to psychological and behavioral risk management.